Ladies, gentlemen, and Harajam of all ages, it's a glorious day of brand new information for us for the upcoming Season 3 hitting the game next week. We all know that there is a developer stream planned for Diablo 4 Thursday evening to discuss Season 3 and a lot of the class and balancing changes that will be coming along with it, but today we actually got a big old drop of information telling us a whole massive construct load of information that we didn't have before. First off, the season is officially called the Season of the Construct. The threat this time around looms below the Kyrgyzstan region, where an ancient technological loom has been taken over by a demon called Malphas, and we are being conscripted into this battle to help undo this terrible corruption. There will be a sort of seasonal hub below Kyrgyzstan as a part of this, where you can interact with the various seasonal mechanics, and of course this will have a questline attached to it too, but for those wondering the main seasonal mechanics that will actually affect our characters themselves, well, it isn't really going to affect us directly, because what it is the Seneschal companion, a construct, essentially just an AI helper that every single class will have access to. And my big hope in seeing this here being the focus of the season is that it is attached to some larger changes to companion and minion AI in general to the game to help out Druid and Necromancer's weaker aspects as well. As of course, if they give that same AI to something that all players have for the whole system, it probably needs a bit of fixing up. That said, it is extremely interesting that none of the actual power-ups for the season apply to the player ourselves, really, but instead they are applications to the permanent friend that we will all have. And to be more specific, the Seneschal companion is customizable to a point of getting to choose the literal skills that it has access to, and then augmenting them pretty notably even past that. The skills then are known as governing stones. You can have 2 equipped in your construct at any given time, but there are 12 total in the game that you can get. You can see the full list here by going down if you want to read it, but the real standouts in my opinion are auto defense, which shoots down any projectiles from non-player or boss sources. Imagine taking out a skeleton ballista's bolt before it even comes close to you. Lightning bolt, which is essentially a chain lightning attack bouncing between lots of enemies. Protect, which gives a barrier to the player themselves. Reconstruct, to heal the player a fair amount. And Tempest, which puts a slowly growing damage debuff on an enemy that changes targets if the original enemy dies and does more damage for each enemy that dies with it active, which is a pretty interesting concept. Then we have tuning stones. You can have 3 of these equipped for each of your governing stone skills, so 6 in total, and these exist to augment the governing stone abilities. There are 27 total in the game of these, and again, all of them will be floating by on the screen, but to highlight some ones that I think are special, voluminous support affects the literal physical size of a skill. That sounds very interesting. Breaking support instantly breaks barriers on enemies, which is quite neat for any enemy that actually has a barrier. Efficiency support gives you increased crit chance against enemies that are hit by the skill. You can change the damage type of the skill to be cold and apply chill, same with fire, lightning, bleed, poison, shadow, etc. And this could actually be really big if, for example, sorcerer with the Tal Rasha effect, if this counts as doing player damage, then sorcerer could keep permanent uptime on both poison and shadow using these contract skills, which is something that sorcerer can't do otherwise, and that would be a big damage boost in itself as a result. So it's a cool idea, but we have to see if it counts as player damage first. There's resource support, which gives the player primary resource generation when the skill does damage, which is actually pretty cool and a unique effect that will help players out. Gripping support, damage and effects that are done by the skill, pulls distant enemies in. This one is awesome for classes without a consistent pull effect, as grouping enemies is awesome to have at your disposal. Then there's also mockery support, which I find quite interesting. Damage done by the skill taunts enemies for a limited duration, meaning you can literally use your construct companion as a tank to try and let you be more aggressive, which is a very big change to the way that the game currently plays, and honestly I'm excited to see how all of that pans out. And it's worth noting that there are also 2 tuning stones that they are leaving as a secret, which are called Evernight and Genesis, and I assume that these will probably be a bit more unique or powerful effects that we unlock through the seasonal questline, more than likely. As part of the season, we are also getting a new type of dungeon called Vaults, accessible from the new little hub area under Kyrgyzstan, listed as being specialized dungeons that house elemental hazards created essentially to protect the loom. And in here is a brand new monster family for the game, Constructs. There are various elemental versions of these creatures, but clearly a point of this is that element is a core theme of the season in general. In the open world, you can find these construct enemies mostly around Kyrgyzstan, and killing elite constructs will give you shattered stones and pearls of warding. Pearls of warding can be used to craft sigils to enter the vault dungeons, which essentially act as a secondary kind of nightmare dungeon-like activity. So there are nightmare sigils and there are also vault sigils, and you can get vault sigils at random as well from the same sources that you get nightmare sigils. The special reward that the vault dungeons offer then are that you get a buff when you enter it that has a number of stacks. stacks. If you die in the dungeon, you lose some stacks. And when you defeat the boss at the end of the dungeon, you get a special chest full of loot that is higher and higher quality the higher your remaining stacks are. And you can even actually sort of bet your pearls of warding at the start of doing one of these vaults if you want to increase your stacks even further than the base amount. Then our next major announcement of note here is actually that the Gauntlet and leaderboards that we knew were going to be a part of Season 3 are actually not releasing at the start of the season, but coming a bit later on. Theoretically, I would expect this to probably be around the middle of the season with this knowledge now, around the equivalent time that we had Abattoir of Zir drop in Season 2. Past that, we just have some other general changes announced to be coming with the season. Some special ones are the promised Helltide changes. Helltide will now only be down for 5 minutes every hour, so pretty constant uptime aside from that. WASD movement is getting improvements for mouse and keyboard users. We're getting a whole bonus dash tab. I know, crazy! But hey, I guess one more tab is better than 0 more for the time being. And then there's just some other general changes that will have more detail given on them in the stream on the 18th, as well as the full patch notes for the season coming in the following day, January 19th. The example that we are shown here, though, is a new respec mode for the skill tree. Theoretically, this would allow you to do full changes on your skill point setup without needing to do a full reset, but also without needing to commit to every single point spent and having to spend money on every single one just to mess around and see some different combinations. And while it still isn't quite build loadouts level of good, it definitely is a step in the right direction towards making build changing easier. Past that, there's also Battle Pass stuff, but we don't really need to dive into that here, I guess. There is one more thing, or I guess 2 more things that we should talk about here. This one from a post by PC Gamer, who obviously was able to talk to developers and got a little bit more information than we did from the official post, which is that there will be new guaranteed sources of 925 item power equipment from various activities after level 75, including tier 90 plus nightmare dungeons. That in itself is excellent. Having ways to farm guaranteed 925 gear is a really good way to actually incentivize different endgame activities. As well, there will be 6 new unique items as well as 7 new legendaries, just like there has been in the past. Generally what this amounts to is 5 new uniques, 1 for each class, as well as 1 that applies to all classes. As for the legendaries, it's again 5 new legendary aspects, which is 1 for each class, then 2 that can apply to all the classes as well. I suppose to sum all the rest of the information up, then we have a ton of new information about Season 3, the season of the Construct. The main focus will be our new Construct companions, who are the source of our seasonal power this time around. Every player will have one, and they are customizable with 12 different skills you can choose from, and 27 different augmentations available to use with the various skills. There seems to be a lot of depth here, and with the power originating from a companion instead of the player themselves, I feel like this gives them a unique opportunity to mess with some more interesting choices, and yet in a way it also makes it easier for them to balance, and it will be nearly the same for every class, depending on how it interacts with certain passives or legendary aspects that different classes have, like the one that we talked about earlier. The Gauntlet and leaderboards are still coming, even though not at the start of the season. They will happen sometime later on in the season after release. And we have a full dev stream coming up in a couple of days to discuss class changes and such for the season, as well as full patch notes coming the day after. All in all, it looks pretty damn good as far as I'm concerned from what we've seen so far. We went from knowing absolutely nothing about this season to knowing a very large amount very quickly, and now you're all caught up too, just like me. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.